Welcome to our house. We're so excited that you've landed here with us. The invitation today is to take your foot off the accelerator, to slow down, to breathe, to invite God's presence. Yeah, let the world fall away for 20 minutes and be present with God. Who else commands all the hosts of heaven? Who else can make every king bow down? Who else can whisper and darkness trembles? Only a holy God. What other beauty demands such praises? What other splendor outshines the sun? What other majesty rules with justice? Only a holy God. Come and behold Him, the one and the only. Cry out, sing holy, forever a holy God. Come and worship the holy God. What other glory consumes like fire? What other power can raise the dead? What other name remains undefeated? Only a holy God. Come and behold Him, the one and the only. Cry out, sing holy, forever a holy God. Come and worship the holy God. Who else could rescue me from my failing? Who else would offer His only Son? Who else invites me to call Him Father? Only a holy God. Only my holy God. Come and behold Him, the one and the only. Cry out, sing holy, forever a holy God. Come and worship the holy God. Come and behold Him, the one and the only. Cry out, sing holy, forever a holy God. Come and worship the holy God.
How do we know what God is like? It's a question many of us ask. What is God like? Well, when you see Jesus, you see God. Jesus' disciples asked the same question. They said to Jesus, "Show us the Father," in John 14:8. And Jesus responded to them, "Whoever has seen me has seen the Father." You see, God looks exactly like Jesus. So when we hear that Jesus' heart is broken over the brokenness of this planet and its impact upon our lives, we know that God is a God whose heart breaks when our heart breaks. Far from being a God in the distance and emotionally removed from us, God is a God of tears and tenderness who is intimately engaged and emotionally engaged in the details of our lives. God is an emotional being, and he is affected emotionally by the lives of those he loves. You must know that God's heart breaks with yours. Jesus shows us this is to be true. Luke shares an incident in the life of Jesus. We see Jesus meeting a mother who is part of the funeral procession, grieving over the death of her son as he is on the way to be buried. She is broken-hearted, as any mother would be, and Jesus is heartbroken with her. I want you to see that this clearly shows us several things about God. Firstly, God is not the author of disease, death, and mayhem. He is the God whose heart breaks over them, for they are against his will and against the way he made things to be. When our lives are impacted by the brokenness of the world, I invite you to see a heartbroken God standing with you in tenderness in your pain. Not a God who authors the pain and sends it your way. Far from that. Jesus is never seen to be the sender of pain. He is never seen as the author of disaster in people's lives. He is always the one who is restoring and healing. Jesus shows us that God is one who heals, restores, and resurrects life. We must not allow our pain, our unanswerable questions, or the misgiving advice of others to shape God in any other way. He is not the God who sends evil. He is the God who opposes evil. And the tears of Jesus won't allow for us to see him any other way. Second, in the coming of Jesus, it shows us absolutely clearly that the will of God is not being done on earth. Jesus makes it very clear he has come to destroy the works of evil, works that were opposed to God's design and desire. He has come to war against them and to establish the will of God. Jesus' coming is clearly set out in Scripture as an act of war. Jesus came to restore God's will on earth because the world was not as God wanted it to be. It didn't consistently manifest God's will as he desired it to be. If the way we understand God is focused on Jesus, then we must understand and see a God who is fighting evil rather than willing evil. He is fighting evil to re-establish his will on earth. You know, it's hard for many of us to hear that God does not get his way. But we must understand that God created a world out of love for the purpose of love. God's goal in creation was that his perfect love would be received by his people, his perfect love would be replicated in his people, and his perfect love would be reflected back from his people. As Gregory A. Boyd, an author who writes of God's ways, he says, "This is why God created the world. The whole of creation is meant to express and embody the eternal, triune love that is God." Now, we all know that love must be chosen for it to be love. So when you design from love for love, then you must design with freedom of choice as an absolute, never to be undermined, never to be taken back imperative of your creation. So a creation where love is the goal must incorporate risk, the risk that people will take their God-given freedom and exercise it against God's plan, against his will. You see, love demands freedom, and freedom empowers free will agents who are able to choose against the will of God. But hang on, I hear you say, isn't God all-powerful? Yes, but the fact that God is all-powerful doesn't mean that he exercises all power. His love demands his power is exercised in restraint. You see, God's power and influence must respect the integrity of the freedom given in the name of love. He must never use his power to coerce or compromise freedom, for if he did so, love would be destroyed. Friends, God doesn't get his way all the time because he allows you to get yours. Love demands it. So when we see God weeping with a mother who has just lost her son, we know that God doesn't always get his way. You're not broken-hearted over your will being done. It breaks God's heart when his will is not being done. But hang on a minute again. Didn't Jesus defeat evil? Well, in the death and resurrection of Jesus, we see that God has conquered evil in principle and that God's overall plan will ultimately be accomplished. But Jesus' defeat of evil does not mean that creation automatically returns back to the full display of the will of God. The seed of defeat has been sown in Jesus, but it must grow in us as we take our freedom of choice and follow God in establishing his ways on earth. We are the vehicle on earth to see God's will realised. Evil has been defeated, yes. So live free from evil and it will be eradicated. It's your God-given freedom to choose to live this way. You see, after Jesus re-established God's will through the resurrection, Jesus tells the crowd this: the blessings of heaven comes upon those who never lose their faith in me, no matter what happens. Jesus raises the widow's son, and he says to the crowd, the blessings of heaven come upon those who never lose faith in me, no matter what happens. Heaven has come in Jesus, and it comes upon us as we walk with him by faith. Now, this does not mean that we will never face circumstances of the broken world, for evil and free will agents are present and active, but we must realise and hold on to by faith is that the redemptive work of God, the manifestation of his will, the presence of heaven is available to come in us and through us and upon us in all circumstances. It may not mean that every son who dies is raised from the dead. It may not look like a change in the circumstances themselves, but it will bring good out of the circumstances. God does not bring circumstances that rob life, but he will work the good of redemption in all circumstances, even those that are authored and intended by evil. A principle of how we see God's redemption flow in our circumstances is that we walk in all circumstances in the faith that God is with me, that he's passionate towards me, that he loves me, and he desires my best. As I walk with him, I see his kingdom manifest, his kingdom come, his redemptive purposes take place in and through me. Again, I say to you, it may not mean that the Son is resurrected, but it will mean that the kingdom is resurrected, displayed, flows, is established on earth in me and through me. Personally, for me, several years ago, death came to something that was an important part of my life, my business life. The thing that I sowed 25 years of my life into died. Now, God was not the author of the demise of my business. That's not who God is. But God did not resurrect my business. What he did was resurrect me. He worked his redemptive plan in me, in the situation. In the most difficult time of my life, he enabled me to walk intimately with him by faith, and he redeemed so much of my life that I had created myself that was outside his will for me. He restored me to be a man who knew the intimacy of his love. He revealed to me the beauty of life in his kingdom. He rescued me from the driving demands of success and restored me peace. Peace in him, peace in my life. The situation was not where the redemptive work took place. The redemptive work was within me, and it's available to you in every circumstance that you find yourself walking. We must hear the promise of God. The blessings of heaven, the redemptive work of God comes upon those who never lose faith in Him, who walk intimately with Him, no matter what happens in life. I mean, the challenge for us is that in our grief and in our whys and in our disappointments, the enemy of God seduces us into loneliness and isolation. We lose sight of the broken-hearted God who grieves with us and become deceived and seduced into laying the blame for what is happening on the shoulders of God. We walk out on the one who holds healing and redemption, and we walk alone. And then the enemy of God releases fear into our lives, for fear always comes when we walk alone. We miss the blessing of the presence of God to walk with us and the redemptive plan of God to come forth within our circumstances. And we're robbed firstly by the circumstances and then robbed again in the circumstances. And God's heart breaks again. I mean, this is one of the fiercest spiritual battles of our lives, to walk by faith in difficult circumstances. It's the fiercest battle I've ever encountered. But a fierce battle doesn't mean we don't have choice. The choice is always ours, to walk by faith in Him. Again, hear the promise of Jesus. The blessing of heaven comes upon those who never lose their faith in Him, no matter what happens. If you want to see the earth restored to the design and the intention of God, then know firstly that God is not in control. Know that His heart breaks at what is happening, for His will is not being done. But also know that He is present in every circumstances to bring and display His redemptive works. Heaven has come to earth, and it will display itself in and through our lives in every circumstance. So maybe now, tonight, this season of life is one of those circumstances where pain and mayhem has been released upon your life. Then I invite you to take a few moments and allow the tears and the tenderness of God to bring His redemptive plans of love and peace and hope and healing and deliverance into your life. Take a few moments. God is with us. Let Him speak. Let His presence bring about His redemptive work. In a few moments, a prayer will come up on the screen that invites you to change your mind from the faulty pictures of God that are often shaped in these circumstances to see that God as He is shown to us in His self-revelation of Jesus. What's God like? He looks like Jesus.
Here in your grace, here in your mercy, here in your love. Who else but you? Who else but you? Who else shows me your love? Who else shows me your light? Who else shows me your grace? Who else shows me your truth? None but you.